Jetzt geht's gleich los mit dem ersten Programmhöhepunkt. Ich freue mich sehr, dass wir heute Dr. Patrick Jermann aus der EPFL, er ist Executive Center am Center for Digital Education, begrüßen dürfen. Er arbeitet bereits seit 2003 im Bereich E-Learning und war mitverantwortlich auch für den Aufbau der MOOC Factory an der EPFL. Die französisch sprechende Eidgenössische Hochschule war für mich immer der Vorreiter, wenn es um digitale Lehre geht. Darum war ich natürlich auch gespannt zu hören, wie es jetzt läuft. In der Corona-Zeit hat sich etwas geändert. Waren die Leute besser vorbereitet, weil eben vorher schon viel digital gemacht wurde? Oder mussten sie genauso wie wir ins kalte Wasser springen? Auch die enge Zusammenarbeit mit der ETH in Zürich bringt sicher auch zusätzliche Lichtblicke, wie in Zukunft die Online-Lehre aussehen könnte. Vielleicht können wir uns so vorstellen, what will stick? Ich möchte aber nun gar nicht mehr lange machen. Ich möchte Patrick sehr herzlich begrüßen. He will talk in English. It's easier for him and certainly good for us. Thank you, Patrick.
Hello everyone, merci vielmals für die Einladung. Wie du gesagt hast, tue ich jetzt auf Englisch. It's easier for business-related stuff to speak in English. So I will take a few minutes to share with you what our experience has been during this difficult time, and I'll just share with you my little presentation for this. And this is basically how our lecture halls look like all over the place in the whole world. And it's a bit saddening at the same time to have to see our universities be empty like this. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity to maybe invent new ways to do or reinforce existing trends that we were seeing just before the lockdown. The work I will show to you today is the result of the merger of two teams, which are the CD, Center for Digital Education, which I am leading, and the CAP, which is the Center for Teaching Support. And so the mix of these two in the end has fulfilled the mission that the Teaching Innovation Lab has been doing at St.Gallen. By the way, the video was really super. I liked it a lot, the one you just showed. So in this crowd, basically you have different type of expertise. So, and it's not that in my team you had only geeks and computer scientists and pedagogues on the other side. We had both expertise in both groups, and so it's mainly the work of people who do pedagogy and instructional design on the one hand, people who are developer or systems engineers, and then media specialists. At the Center for Digital Education, we were created in 2013 to be the MOOC factory for EPFL. So our core business at the beginning was to create online lectures, online courses, and now we have also diversified the type of things that we support. So I will start with a little timeline of everything that has happened. This is a bit a complex slide, but basically the gray bars represent the weekends, and on the left you have the lockdown. So on March 6th, we heard you have to move large lectures online because we don't want gatherings of more than 150 people on campus. And we learned this, I think it was a Thursday, and on Monday that had to run. So it was a weekend time to get up to speed, to learn how to use Zoom, and then on Monday pretend we are the experts of how to use Zoom. And in the beginning, we were doing one-on-one support because we had the list of 80 large lectures, and so we were calling professors and helping them getting ready to teach right away using Zoom. Since the beginning, then we started collecting frequently asked questions and started documenting what we were doing. And 1 week later, the whole university had to move online. And that's when we started building a website, moving to a service desk to be able to answer the request in a more professional way. And we started producing documentation. So these, I will show you just an example of quick start guides and use cases. And something we've done and that others have done as well in many universities is these drop-in sessions. These were Zoom sessions for teachers to come and ask their questions. And in the beginning, of course, everything was very technical, how to set up a webinar, what's the difference with a meeting and so on. But as we progressed after 3 weeks or so, the questions were more pedagogical. How can I organize an exercise session? How do I maintain contact with my students? How do I conduct online labs and so on? And so these aspects we addressed especially in these use cases. We then also conducted a survey after 3 weeks, and I will present some results from these surveys. We surveyed teachers and students about how things are going. And as you said in the video or in the introduction, the question now is, how will September look like and what will stick from this experience we went through? So documentation, we mainly produced slideshows. So rather than writing long documents, we tried to keep it very short. And the quick start guides, as I said, are more technical. The use cases are more pedagogical. We did a few video tutorials that had a mixed success. Some only had 10 views, which is not a lot for the amount of work that you have to put into a video tutorial, and others had a bit more, 120. All that stuff is available at the address that you see here. If you want to have a closer look, you have them listed as quick start guides and use cases over there. Here is how use case looks like. So this one is illustrating how to conduct an exercise session where students come to ask questions. And this is really one of the most difficult aspects of teaching online. We've heard from the teachers is how to be able to answer questions. And so in that use case, we described that students can actually join a Zoom meeting, have a discussion with a dispatcher TA that will assign them to one of the breakout rooms here. Then they have a one-on-one discussion with the teaching assistant, and then they leave and do their exercises outside. It's actually interesting because when people think of an exercise session, there isn't much happening in the room, but the teacher sees everyone working. And this you lose when you have a Zoom meeting because people don't come to a Zoom meeting to silently work. And so it's all about inventing a bit these use cases and these different ways of teaching, I think, that are at the core of this change that we're all going through. A few words about the student survey. So we had 3,000 answers to questions about how things are going for students. First of all, they all were very positive about the efforts that the school and the teachers have made to transition to, I could say, emergency online lecturing. But it's very difficult for them to stay in front of the machine for 6 to 8 hours. So simply transposing the regular schedule to Zoom, I mean, okay, it works if you have to switch from one day to the other, but on the long term, we have to think of other ways to teach where maybe we drop the schedule and students can watch the lectures whenever they want, or maybe we lecture a bit less. Students have been asking for more resources, more exercises, detailed solutions, clear expectations about what is expected. All the stuff that a distance university is probably doing since the 70s, but we as a on-campus university were not used to make so explicit. The teacher maybe says 5 minutes before the end what you have to do for next week, but this doesn't necessarily transfer to distance. And then We also asked a bit, what is important. So first of all, the recording of courses, being able to do exercises and so on. And just the last point, which is important, is that as soon as students are at home, they are not as homogeneous as they used to be on campus. On campus, you have a captive audience who follow a bit what you say. And at home, we see it a bit in this graph, which is too complex to explain right now. But in the student comments, you basically see some prefer pre-recorded lectures that they get before the scheduled time, but also the possibility to ask questions, whereas others like live lectures better because of the interactivity and because they feel it structures their day. And so there are quite different aspects. On the teacher side, they also got a grip of online tools. They say it's a huge workload to get ready for online lecturing, especially if you pre-record the things, because people tend to edit and polish their courses. They miss the contact with the students and report these difficulties in organizing exercise sessions. I'll spend a few minutes also just reflecting a bit about the role. It was very nice because, Jacqueline, you described the Teaching Innovation Lab as being in between the IT service, the pedagogical advice, and probably the administration and Studienadministration and so on. And this is basically this triangle. And so we were facing different types of choices where these three aspects are often influencing each other. For instance, I have a few examples. There is Zoom bombing. At some point, people in the press and everywhere were afraid that people could come in a Zoom meeting and show pornographic images and stuff like this. And the question was, well, should we let students participate or should we do just one-way transmissions? So the legal side, if you want, was afraid of reputation and image damage. On the technical side, you can answer, there are simple ways to prevent this. You just set a password or you don't share the link. And on the pedagogical side, of course, students should be able to participate because this will sustain their attention and activate them as learners. And so in this case, we didn't lock down the Zoom meetings because of this legal constraint. We used a technical solution to enable pedagogical activity. Another example, whether we should record lectures or let people do live recording. At the very beginning of the lockdown, it was imposed that people have to record the lectures because we wanted to avoid students gathering on campus to look at their laptops all together in the cafeteria during a live session. And so the problem then on the technical side was, if you use a Zoom recording in the cloud, it takes sometimes half a day to process. And if your exercise session is just after the lecture time, you don't have enough time to produce the lecture, record it, compile it, and have students watch it before the exercises. So one of the ways was to move the exercises to the next week. You don't have in week N, you don't have the exercises of the week N, but of the week before. So, and this is pedagogically great. Having a delay between the lecture and the exercise is great. Unfortunately, once everyone had to teach on campus, we switched to live recording as well. And then we lost this benefit. So it's really a trade-off sometimes. So same story a bit with SwitchTube. Maybe I will skip that one since we're getting short on time. But we were all the time in this triangle, basically negotiating. And it was also interesting because the collaboration links with these different units in the organization were becoming much faster, much quicker, just because of the time pressure. And I think that's an interesting space to be in, to shape change and just to strengthen collaboration. So I'll conclude with just a few thoughts about what's coming next. And so I like this Argerich and Schön in general systems theory and regulation theories a lot. And so when there is in a system some pressure that forces you to change, either you do single loop learning, I guess in St.Gallen, you know, that type of organizational theories where you just react. So we could have said in that case, let's do Zoom for one semester, but in September we go back exactly to the same. Or we use this opportunity to have a double loop learning where basically the governing variables of the system, what are the norms and the standards, are changing. And so I don't have the answer really of what will change, because this is what we are currently looking at. But I think in the discussions we had these last weeks, definitely knowledge control. What do we test in the exams and what are the learning outcomes we want to achieve? This is something that is getting more thought and maybe will also affect deeper the way the whole university works. There is also teachers who think about inverted classroom, maybe teaching a bit less content, but for deeper understanding. And these were actually things that existed before COVID. And I really think that this is like revealing existing trends and maybe helping select what was there before, but is basically made visible in the crisis time. There is certainly also opportunities for local platforms that are hosted in Switzerland, like, I don't know, the Swiss MOOC service, for instance, or other. I'm doing a little bit of publicity there. But that has also been in all domains, you know, how much do we depend on external services and how much are we able to control ourselves? I think these are questions that are probably going to affect a bit on the longer term the way our institutions are working. So thanks for your attention.
Wonderful, Patrick. I'm very glad to hear that you faced some of the same problems as we had. That's good to hear. And actually, we do have a question for you in the chat already. It's by Robert Kortz-Freudinger. He's at the HDZ, Hochschuldidaktische Zentrum. And he wanted to know, do you see any difference in terms of quality of teaching if you compare in class versus online? Or just in general, do you think it's all about quality of teaching and not really about technology, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. Technology is a detail, I think, in these aspects. And what really counts is the design of the learning situations. And it probably was a bit suboptimal to have to move so quickly in an emergency. As I said in the beginning, we transposed the practice on campus to an online tool. But now that we have a little bit more time to plan for September, not much time, but at least more than 2 days, I think it's worth rethinking a bit the organization of learning and also offering learners more support, because they are used to come to campus. And I think we also have to support the learners themselves in getting used to these blended models or distance modalities.
Yeah, wonderful. We do have some remarks in the chat. That's very interesting also to read for all of you. You mentioned also the inverted classroom. I know that EPFL is doing a lot already in producing learning units that you can actually use in your class. How did that work out? Did they use a lot of their online content in their class already? Because we don't have much online content that we could use for remote teaching.
So the teachers who had a MOOC were in a perfect situation. It was super easy for them to say, okay, no problem. I tell my students to watch the lectures before, and I do a live Q&A session to discuss use cases. So they were doing an online flipped classroom. for them it was really, really great. And I see now in the teacher comments, even the ones who recorded their Zoom meetings, they plan to reuse them next year, and they think about switching to a model where they have online resources available for the lecturing part.
So would you agree with me that video will stick in one way or another?
Yes, definitely. So we're thinking of, the thing is now, if we have to help people for September, we have a bit a limited capacity. So I computed this morning that if we want to do studio recordings for a lecture and so on, we can maybe support between 40 and 80 lectures till September. There are only 15 weeks remaining. So if every week you come to the studio to record for 2 hours the lecture for next semester, that's a bit, we don't have enough bandwidth to serve 600 courses. But what we are going to do is offer tutorials and advice for people to do home recording and simple editing. There is simple stuff you can do, do short lectures of 10 to 12 minutes rather than an hour and a half. You can plan your lecture in a nice way. Be careful about the slides and illustrations that you use. Sustain attention by pointing, using laser pointers, and that's okay. And if you have a good microphone, it will never be as Rolls-Royce as a MOOC, but it will be a Jaguar, and that's good enough.
Certainly better than emergency remote teaching. Thank you so much, Patrick, for this very insightful talk of today. We do have a small present for you. It will be delivered online, and it will give you some relaxing time on your garden chair with a good book in your hands.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I hope you will stay a little longer with us.
Sure.
We are now moving towards the first break. And we do have a little bit of an activity for you. We want you to think about, how did I feel when I first heard I have to teach online? Show your emotion by a GIF. We see each other again in 10 minutes.